Two young women set off on a bright April morning for what was supposed to be a simple hike through the lush Panamanian jungle. They smiled for photos, waved at locals, and disappeared into the trees. Days later, only a few scattered belongings would surface. Months later, fragments of bones, a backpack filled with strange photographs, and a mystery that refuses to be solved. This is the story of Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, a tragedy wrapped in unanswered questions and one of the most haunting mysteries of the 21st century. Chris Kremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22, were two close friends from Amersfoort in the Netherlands. Both were adventurous, bright, and filled with wanderlust. After years of saving and planning, they set out on a 6-week trip to Panama in 2014. The idea was to experience the culture, learn Spanish, and volunteer with local children. By late March, they had arrived in the small mountain town of Boquete, a beautiful but rugged area surrounded by misty jungles, rivers, and steep terrain. They stayed with a local host family and planned to begin volunteer work the following week. But before that, on April 1st, the women decided to go exploring. Just one hike, the famous Pianista Trail. That morning, neighbors saw them leaving with light clothing, hiking boots, and small backpacks. They were spotted with a dog belonging to locals, who often followed tourists up the trail. Photos found later on Lisanne's camera show the girls smiling, relaxed, and enjoying the first part of the hike. Bright blue skies, lush green hills. Nothing seemed wrong, but the Pianista Trail is deceptive. While the first section is tourist-friendly, the path soon grows steeper, wilder, and less marked. Locals warn hikers not to cross the Continental Divide without a guide, yet the last cheerful photo of Chris and Lisanne suggests they did exactly that. After that point, silence. When the girls didn't return that evening, concern began to grow. By April 2nd, their families back home knew something was wrong. On April 3rd, a massive search effort was launched. Helicopters, local police, native guides, even Dutch investigators flew in. But after days combing the jungle, no trace of the women was found. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. For weeks, the trail grew cold. Then, in June, over 2 months later, a local woman stumbled upon a strange object near a riverbank, far from where the girls were last seen. It was a blue backpack. Inside were both women's belongings, 2 pairs of sunglasses, a camera, 2 phones, a water bottle, and Lisanne's passport. Everything was neatly packed and dry, as if it had not been sitting in the jungle for weeks. Investigators discovered that the women had tried calling for help on April 1st, the very day they vanished. Both Chris's iPhone and Lisanne's Samsung had attempted emergency calls. But deep in the jungle, no signal could connect. Over the next several days, dozens of attempts were made to dial emergency numbers. Then something stranger emerged. On April 5th, Lisanne's phone ran out of battery. Chris's iPhone continued to be turned on and off sporadically. On April 11th, 10 days after the hike, the PIN code was entered incorrectly dozens of times, as if someone else was trying to access it. Who was holding the phone that long? Was Chris still alive? Or had someone else been using it? The camera held hundreds of pictures. The early ones were normal, bright daylight shots of the hike. But then, there was a gap. 10 nights later, a strange series of over 90 nighttime photos were taken, deep in the jungle. Most were black, showing nothing but foliage, rocks, or close-ups of the trail. One appeared to show a strange stick with plastic bags tied to it. Another seemed to capture the back of Chris's head. Were these desperate signals for help? Random attempts to use the flash as a flashlight? Or something more sinister? Not long after the backpack surfaced, investigators discovered human remains scattered along the riverbank. a piece of Lysian's foot still inside her boot, a fragment of her pelvic bone, then part of Chris's rib cage and femur. Forensic testing showed something unsettling. Lysan's remains still had some skin and tissue, consistent with natural decomposition. Chris's bones, however, were unusually clean and bleached, almost as if they had been treated with chemicals. Why such a stark difference? The tragedy of Chris and Lysan has spawned endless theories. Accident, that they got lost beyond the continental divide, injured, and slowly succumbed to starvation or exposure. Foul play, that someone led them deeper into the jungle, possibly attacked them, and later staged the backpack discovery. Something stranger, that the eerie photos, bleached bones, and timelines suggest events we may never fully understand. Even today, locals whisper about what really happened on the Pianista Trail. Two best friends, thousands of miles from home, vanished into the jungle, leaving behind only photos, bones, and questions that will never be answered. The case of Chris Kremers and Lysan Froon is more than a tragedy. It is a haunting reminder that sometimes, even in our modern world, people can step off the edge of the map and disappear into mystery. On a frozen mountainside in the Ural wilderness, 9 experienced hikers set up camp. By morning, every one of them was dead. Some with broken bones no human strength could cause. Some without eyes. One without a tongue. And no one, not in 1959 and not today, can agree on what really happened. This is the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident. It was January 1959. 9 skilled mountaineers, most in their early 20s, all seasoned in the bitter cold, left for a skiing expedition deep into the northern Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. The leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student known for his precision and discipline. They weren't amateurs. They carried supplies, diaries, and cameras, documenting each stage of their journey. When they returned, they would be awarded the highest hiking certification available at the time. On January 25th, they reached the last inhabited settlement before the wilderness. 2 days later, they began their trek toward a peak ominously named Gora Otorten. Don't go there in the language of the local Mansi people. Bad weather soon caught them. Snow blinded their path, and the wind screamed across the ridges. They strayed off course, climbing a slope of another mountain, Kholat Syakhl, Mountain of the Dead. Rather than turn back, they made camp on the exposed slope. Just 1.5 kilometers below lay the shelter of a forest. But for reasons still debated, they stayed where they were. That decision would be their last. The hikers were expected back by February 12th. When no word came, friends and family were concerned. But delays weren't uncommon in such harsh terrain. 8 days later, panic set in. Search parties were formed. Soldiers and helicopters joined the hunt. On February 26th, rescuers found the camp. The tent was half buried in snow and cut open from the inside. Inside lay all their gear, boots, coats, food, untouched. 9 sets of footprints led away into the dark. Some were barefoot, some wore only socks, in temperatures that could kill in minutes. The trail led to the edge of the forest. Beneath a towering pine, they found the first 2 bodies, lying near the remains of a small fire. Both were dressed in only their underwear. Branches above them were broken high in the tree, as if someone had climbed desperately for something, or to escape something. 3 more bodies were found between the tree and the tent, frozen mid-stride as though trying to crawl back to camp. The last 4 took over 2 months to find. Buried beneath 4 meters of snow in a ravine, they were dressed in clothing taken from the others, as if they had survived longer. But their injuries didn't match a simple death from the cold. One man had his skull smashed with force comparable to a car crash. 2 others had ribs shattered inward, as though by a massive pressure, yet no external wounds. One woman was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her face. 2 bodies had clothing contaminated with radiation. Official investigators eventually blamed an avalanche, but many disagree. There was no sign of an avalanche path. Footprints showed the hikers walking, not running, from their tent. Other expeditions had camped there without incident, before and after. And the injuries, the missing body parts, the radiation, none of it fit the avalanche theory neatly. So the rumors began. Some whispered of a secret Soviet military test, and the hikers had seen something they weren't meant to see. Others spoke of strange lights in the sky and alien interference. Local legends warned of the Menk, a massive ape-like creature in the mountains. Or perhaps the hikers turned on each other, driven mad by fear. The truth remains buried beneath the snow. But one fact endures. Whatever happened on that mountain in 1959, it was enough to terrify 9 experienced adventurers into leaving the safety of their camp and walking, half-dressed, into certain death. Imagine a man who reinvented himself so many times that nobody really knew who he was. Not his wives, not his neighbors, not even the police for decades. Every time you thought you had him figured out, he slipped away, like a shadow fading into another identity. That man was Franklin Delano Floyd. And his story isn't just crime, it's deception, kidnapping, murder, and one of the eeriest mysteries in American history. Franklin Delano Floyd was born in 1943 in Barnesville, Georgia. His father died when he was just 1. Now, orphanage stories are rarely heartwarming. This one was brutal. Floyd endured abuse and bullying, and by the age of 16, he had already started showing signs of what he'd become. Violent, unpredictable, and obsessed with control. When he ran away, he didn't just run from the orphanage. He ran from reality itself. He began weaving lies, fabricating identities like a magician pulling rabbits out of hats. Except these rabbits were forged documents, stolen names, and manipulations that would span decades. In 1962, he broke into a woman's home, armed with a knife. His target wasn't money, it was her. He assaulted her. He was caught, sentenced, but like a ghost, he slipped through cracks in the system. Paroled, arrested again, escaped, vanished. Each arrest, each record, should have pinned him down. But Franklin had one talent above all. He knew how to become someone else. He forged identities like a dark artist. Charles Hughes, Warren Judson Marshall, Clarence Marcus Hughes. Each name was a mask, and people believed him. This is where the story turns from unsettling to horrifying. In 1975, Floyd kidnapped a young girl. Her name wasn't Sharon Marshall. That was just one of the lies. Her real name? Suzanne Savakis. But no one knew that until decades later. To the outside world, Sharon was his daughter. He raised her under that lie. He controlled every aspect of her life, grooming her with chilling precision. And when she grew older, Floyd's role shifted from father to husband. Yeah, he married her, his own daughter. If your skin just crawled, good, it should, because this is the darkest part of Franklin's shadow. Sharon Marshall, the girl with no past, was brilliant. Teachers remembered her as smart, kind, with dreams of becoming an aerospace engineer. But Floyd had other plans. He dragged her into his twisted orbit, forcing her into adult films, stripping her of identity until only his control defined her life. In 1990, Sharon was killed in what was called a hit and run. Floyd claimed she had died accidentally, but suspicion swirled. Witnesses described him as abusive, controlling, manipulative. After Sharon's death, Floyd's grip didn't loosen. It tightened. He kidnapped her son, Michael Hughes, at gunpoint from his elementary school. To this day, Michael's fate remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the case. Floyd claimed he killed the boy, but no body was ever found. No evidence, just Floyd's word. And if history taught us anything, it's that his word was worth less than ash. It took decades for the truth to surface. Investigators untangled lie after lie, identity after identity, until finally, Sharon Marshall's real name came to light. She wasn't his daughter, she wasn't his wife, she was a stolen child. Imagine that for a second. Your whole life, you don't even know who you are. Everyone calls you Sharon. You go to school, you dream about your future, but you're living inside someone else's fabrication. That's what Franklin Delano Floyd did to Suzanne Savakis. He stole her name, her future, her life. Floyd was finally caught in 1994 after a police chase, convicted of kidnapping, assault, and eventually the murder of Cheryl Comesso, another victim entangled in his twisted world. In prison, Floyd never gave clarity. He teased investigators, dropped cryptic comments, admitted one crime only to deny another. He thrived in the confusion. To him, lies weren't just a tool. They were a home. He was sentenced to death. But to this day, the case still feels unfinished. Michael Hughes remains missing. The full story of Suzanne's childhood under his control may never be known. Franklin Delano Floyd's story isn't just about crime. It's about the horror of identity theft at its most extreme. He didn't just steal credit cards. He stole lives. He stole futures. And if you ask me, that's what makes him more terrifying than your typical killer. He wasn't content with murder. He wanted to rewrite reality. So here's the eerie thought that sticks with me. If Franklin Floyd could live decades under fake names, walking among ordinary people, what makes you so sure the friendly neighbor across the street is who they say they are? Sleep well with that thought. If you think you've heard every true crime mystery, think again. This one has no clear answers. Only strange clues, chilling discoveries, and questions that haunt investigators to this day. The Yuba County 5 case isn't just unsolved, it's bizarre. In February 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, set out for a basketball game, but never came home. Days later, their car was found abandoned in the snowy mountains. Doors unlocked, keys missing, and no sign of the men. What followed is one of the most perplexing missing person cases in American history. A chilling mystery forever known as the Yuba County 5. The 5 men were friends brought together by a shared love of sports and community programs. There was 30-year-old Ted Wire, the gentle giant of the group, friendly, kind, but living with a mild intellectual disability. Jack Madruga, 30, was a quiet, dependable man, a U.S. Army veteran who loved driving his turquoise Mercury Montego. His close friend, Bill Sterling, 29, was deeply religious, often spending hours volunteering at local hospitals. Jack Hewitt, just 24, was the youngest, playful, full of energy, and always smiling. And then there was Gary Mathias, 25, a former Army serviceman who had struggled with schizophrenia but was managing his condition and staying close to his friends. On February 24, 1978, the group piled into Madruga's Montego and set off from Yuba City toward Chico, California. Their plan? Watch a college basketball game, then return home. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, the kind they'd done many times before. But sometime after that game, something happened. Something that would take them far off course into the freezing wilderness of the Plumas National Forest. And no one can say why. 2 days after the basketball game, the family started to worry. None of the men had returned home, and for these 5, that was unusual. On February 28th, 4 days later, deputies found something strange. Jack Madruga's turquoise 1969 Mercury Montego, sitting abandoned on a remote snow-covered dirt road in the Plumas National Forest. The car wasn't stuck. It wasn't broken down. In fact, the keys were missing, but the fuel tank was 1/4 full. Tire tracks showed no sign of frantic turning or skidding. It had simply been driven there, then left behind. Even stranger, the spot was miles off their expected route home. To get there, they would have had to climb over mountains and wind through narrow forest roads in the dead of night, with no clear reason. Inside, investigators found programs from the basketball game, neatly folded maps, and some snack wrappers. But no coats, no heavy winter gear, and no sign of the men themselves. It was bitter cold that night. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. Without shelter or supplies, anyone out here would be in danger within hours. Search teams combed the surrounding forest for days, on snowshoes and helicopters, even using scent-tracking dogs, but the mountains gave nothing back. It was as if the men had vanished into the snow. For months, the mystery deepened. The mountains kept their secrets, until June 4th, nearly 5 months after the disappearance. A small group of motorcyclists, riding through a remote area of the Plumas National Forest, came across something unexpected. A Forest Service trailer, inside and was horror. On a bed under 8 sheets of blankets lay the body of Ted Wire. He had starved to death. His beard was grown out to an estimated 13 weeks, meaning he had survived for months after the group vanished. The trailer itself wasn't locked. Inside there were unopened cans of food, a working propane heater, and enough supplies to survive the winter. Yet the food remained untouched, and Wire had slowly wasted away. In a nearby shed, searchers found a locker filled with dehydrated rations, also untouched, and there was no sign of the other 4 men. Weeks later, searchers discovered the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling, partially consumed by animals, just a few miles from the trailer, as if they'd tried to walk for help. A little further away, scattered bones belonging to Jack Hewitt were found, but Gary Mathias just was never found at all. Only his shoes lay in the trailer, suggesting he had been there, and then left for reasons unknown. So what happened to the Yuba County 5? Investigators have pieced together possibilities, but none explain every detail. Theory 1, they got lost and froze. The simplest explanation is that the group took a wrong turn into the mountains after the basketball game. Their car got stuck and they tried to survive. But that doesn't explain why they drove so far off their route, why they abandoned a working vehicle, or why the trailer's food and heater weren't used. Theory 2, an accident or injury forced them to seek help. Some suggest one of the men, perhaps Gary Mathias, who had schizophrenia but was stable on medication, suffered a mental or physical crisis. The group might have panicked and headed for the trailer in confusion, but the supplies were never touched, and the distances covered in snow would have been brutal without proper gear. Theory 3, they were chased. Some believe they fled into the wilderness to escape someone or something that was following them. This could explain the odd route and why they abandoned food and warmth, but no suspects, tracks, or evidence of pursuit were ever found. Theory 4. Foul play in the mountains. A more sinister idea is that they encountered someone dangerous in that remote area. Perhaps they were forced to leave their car, split up, and hide. But why would Wire be left alive in the trailer for months with food untouched? Theory 5. Something we can't explain. This is the theory that keeps people awake, that something happened in those mountains that defies logic. Something that caused 5 grown men in good health to abandon safety, walk into snow without reason, and make choices that led to their deaths, and one of them vanishing forever. Decades have passed, but the Yuba County 5 mystery still refuses to give up its secrets. 4 families buried their sons without truly knowing why they died. One family still waits for answers about Gary Mathias, whose fate remains unknown. Every piece of evidence in this case seems to raise more questions than it answers. Why did they drive into the mountains? Why abandon a car that worked? Why leave food untouched while starving? And what happened to Gary? Until those questions are answered, the case of the Yuba County 5 will remain one of America's strangest mysteries, where every clue seems to point in the wrong direction. Maybe the truth is still out there, hidden under the snow, in the mountains, or in someone's memory. On a cold February night in 2004, a young nursing student named Maura Murray vanished without a trace. What began as a seemingly ordinary car accident quickly spiraled into a mystery that has baffled investigators, captivated true crime fans, and left a chilling question lingering in the dark. What really happened to Maura Murray? Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts. Described by friends and family as smart, driven, and independent, she seemed to have a bright future ahead. But beneath the surface, there were signs of stress and secrecy, missing classes, personal issues, and an increasing sense of isolation. These details, small on their own, would later make investigators wonder, was Maura planning to disappear, or was something sinister already in motion? It was February 9th, 2004. Maura called her professors and work, saying she would be away for a few days, though no one knows exactly why. Later that day, she packed her car and drove north toward New Hampshire. Around 7:30 p.m. on a quiet rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire, her car was spotted by a local driver. It had veered off the road and crashed into a snowbank. When police arrived, they found the car abandoned. The driver's side door was open and Maura was gone. No footprints led away from the scene. No signs of struggle were visible, and the night was cold and dark. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The search for Maura Murray began immediately, but almost instantly, the case became stranger than anyone could have imagined. Police scoured the snowy roads, the dark forests, the quiet towns nearby. They spoke to neighbors, checked gas stations, traced phone calls, but Maura was nowhere. Her abandoned car was a riddle in metal and snow. Wallet and cell phone untouched. Laptop, keys, and a small bag of clothes left behind. No struggle, no footprints leading into the darkness. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Eyewitness accounts added layers of unease. One person reported seeing a dark figure near the crash site, slipping silently toward the woods. Another claimed to have glimpsed a woman resembling Maura at a gas station hours later, seemingly calm, as if nothing had happened, as if she belonged somewhere else entirely. Even online, the mystery took twisted turns. Forums lit up with tips, hoaxes, and cryptic messages. Some claimed insider knowledge. Others were impossible to verify. Every lead seemed to snake into another dead end. For investigators, family, and friends, the most haunting truth was this. It wasn't just that she was missing, it was the unknown. Every shadow, every unconfirmed sighting, every silent road at night became a whisper of the darkness she seemed to have walked into, and perhaps never left. As the years passed, theories about Maura Murray's disappearance multiplied. Some say she staged her own vanishing, leaving behind the life she knew, overwhelmed, seeking escape. Others believe something far darker took her. The remote roads and forests of New Hampshire offer cover for predators. A single encounter in that bitter cold could have turned deadly. Or perhaps the woods themselves swallowed her presence, leaving only silence and snow behind. Then there are the stranger possibilities. Over the years, people have reported glimpses of Maura, strange phone calls, cryptic messages online, hints of something that can't be explained. Were these echoes of her, or just the mind's way of filling a terrifying gap? True crime enthusiasts continue to analyze every detail, searching for patterns in the chaos. But the case resists closure. Every time we think we understand, the darkness shifts. The questions remain. Did she disappear by choice, or was she taken? And if taken, by whom or what? It's the uncertainty that chills the most. A disappearance that refuses to be solved. A story that echoes through the cold New Hampshire forests, waiting, watching, and reminding us that some secrets may never want to be found. Maura Murray vanished that February night, and decades later, her story remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in recent memory. Every lead, every clue, every whispered sighting seems to pull us deeper into the darkness. Yet the truth remains just out of reach. Some disappearances are solved, giving closure. But Maura's fate continues to elude us, leaving only questions. And the eerie feeling that perhaps some secrets are never meant to be uncovered. What do you think happened to Maura Murray? Was it a daring escape, a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? Share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, some mysteries are darker than we can imagine, waiting quietly in the shadows for someone brave enough to confront them.